All right, welcome everyone. This is Our Travel Experiences. I'm your host, Kyle Rasmussen, and today I have with me Larissa. Larissa, how are you?
Hi, Kyle. I'm doing well. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
Yeah, glad to have you here. I'm super excited to talk about your travel experiences. It looks like you've been a lot of places during the last couple of years while we've had a pandemic going on. So
Uh-huh.
I'm excited to hear what traveling during that crazy time was like.
Oh, absolutely. So I guess it all kind of started, 2020, right? We were all very excited. I was actually supposed to be in Florence, Italy that summer. Right,
Oh wow.
right, yeah, right where there was like the huge initial outbreak.
Yeah, that's where it started outside of China.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. So, and I was excited. I was gonna be there for school a little bit and then spend some time traveling around after the rest of Europe or Eastern Europe. So that entire thing, got canceled. I
Hmm.
even remember, talking to people like in March and like, oh, I'm gonna get my flight. We'll be good, right? And everyone's like, yeah, yeah, we'll be fine. And that quickly deteriorated.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you were supposed to be in Florence, and then that got shut down. So when did you actually start traveling during the
when
pandemic?
did, yeah, when did I start traveling again? So I think it was summer. The years I'm getting the years all confused now. I think it was summer of 2021.
Okay.
And, I had some time off, and I was originally supposed to go on like a national park road trip with my
Oh
sister.
wow, that
Yeah,
sounds.
and I know. I was super excited. Um, Long story short, there was some logistical issues with like their van and everything that they were taking, so there wasn't room for me.
Oh damn.
So I was really upset, and I was like, I don't want to go on a road trip by myself. Like it doesn't sound fun.
Hmm.
Where can I go that and I start looking into places. I'm like, where can I go outside the country where you just need a vaccine card? Um
Hmm.
and so I'm looking, and one of the first places to pop up was Costa Rica.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever been?
I have not been to Costa Rica, unfortunately.
Okay, okay. Yeah, me either. It was my first time.
Okay, so
So
you went there.
yeah, so I start like looking into it, and this was like very, very last minute because I had previous plans that fell through.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm looking at transportation, like how to get around and everything, because I've been to Europe quite a bit, and you know, it's easy to take the train, and
Yeah.
it's pretty manageable. And
Hmm.
so I quickly realized like transportation was not reliable. So I ended up like booking this group tour. So I would be part of a tour in Costa Rica. Again, like very last minute. And I was like, whatever, we're just gonna do it. I'm sure it'll be great.
Yeah. What was the group that you went with?
I think I heard you mention this on a previous podcast, but I went with Kentucky.
Okay.
And
Cool.
yeah, and I knew nothing about. I really should have done more research, but because it was so last minute, I got some advice from a travel agent, and I was just like, "Sure, let's do it."
Was it for like young professionals kind of thing, or what was the kind of theme?
Yeah, yeah. This one was, I think, just people. I think 18 to 35, so
Okay.
a younger crowd, and so I wasn't really sure what to expect going there,
Hmm.
or like what the demographic was going to be like and everything. And it actually turned out, I think we had a group of almost all Americans, which was kind of crazy and kind of unique. But you got to remember, at this time, Costa Rica, I think, was only open to Americans. So, like, if you were
Hmm.
from Europe, you couldn't get in with a Vax card yet, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of unique. There was a few people from other countries like Brazil, Bermuda, but it was mainly all Americans, which was like kind of a unique thing. Not a lot of diversity, but it was unique.
How long were you there for?
Oh gosh, I was there a pretty long time. About 2 weeks or so. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And what all did you guys do while you were there?
Oh my gosh, it was a ton of fun. Yeah, we did. I feel like all of us were, so kept up with the pandemic and everything, and this was like
Mhm.
this huge release of like finally being able to go somewhere and do something. And it was great because a lot of the activities were outside. So we
Mhm.
spent a lot of time outside and felt very safe and everything. But yeah, we did. I was hoping to interact with the local population more. Um, but again, because of the pandemic, we had to make adjustments to the itinerary.
Yeah.
So half the time, instead of like going out to dinner or bars in town and meeting locals, we just ended up like all going back to the hotel and having a pool party or something like that, which was kind of cool because we all had that like American culture and
Yeah.
got pretty comfortable with each other right off the bat. So it was a ton of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah. Honestly, that's one of my kind of like cons of group travel is that
Uh huh.
sometimes it can be hard to meet the locals and kind of get more immersed in the local culture sometimes.
Right.
But
Right.
on the flip side, you get, a nice group that you're with, and you might have some lifelong friends that come out of that. I know I've become
And
really good friends with a lot of people I've traveled with and met on group trips.
yeah, and that's funny you say that, and because I've been on a few other group trips since then, but this one was so unique, and we actually had this group of us come out of this trip, and we have actually met up already again a few other times for other trips, just
Oh, very
domestically.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, and that's cool about all living in the United States is it's easier to meet up versus hey, you meet someone from like I had a roommate from Dubai
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm like, "Oh my gosh, we're best friends, we get along, but I don't know when I'm gonna see you again."
Yeah. You live literally on the other side of the world.
Yeah, it's, kind of bittersweet, but
That's funny.
yeah.
What was your favorite part of Costa Rica?
Oh, my favorite part? Oh gosh, that's such a good question, they asked us this before we left too, and it was so hard to pick. Honestly, I just loved I'm, like, trying to, like, look back through my camera roll and, like, remember what we did. Um, I love being outside, going to the beach, being I should have mentioned I'm from Seattle, so we don't really have a lot of beaches over here.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So that was a ton of fun, and we went on this, um, like, giant boat and went swimming in the middle of the ocean, went surfing, just things you can't do here, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Was the water warm?
Oh, yeah, way, way warmer than here.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that like warm tropical water. That's you can't beat
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and it's kinda funny, so we were talking about the locals and whatnot. I One of my friends on the trip, she, one evening, she wasn't gonna come out to dinner with us, and we were like, "Oh, where are you going?" And she's like, "Oh, my aunt and uncle live in this city. I'm gonna go have dinner with them." And we were just like, "What?" Like,
That's
turns
kind of
out there's
crazy.
yeah, turns out there's, like, a lot of expats or Americans living in Costa Rica, so that was kinda cool.
Yeah, I've heard that that's a really hot destination for retirees and expats to live
Right,
in.
right. So, honestly, didn't feel like too much of a culture shock. It was my first time in, Central America, but yeah, kinda reminded me of parts of Mexico.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Cool. So you went to Costa Rica, and then where did you go after that?
Oh, okay, so I didn't, it wasn't all hopping around. I would come back here and then
Yeah.
leave and everything. So Costa Rica was a great experience, and let me bring up, like, the pandemic situation at that point. So, um, I think, yeah, to get into the country, you just needed your vaccine card, show that, you were all good, and I think people had, like, either 1 or 2 maybe, I'm not sure, maybe two, but at least one or two doses at this point. And then
Hmm.
to get out, we needed to test negative to come back to the US, right?
Hmm.
And we had about like, oh gosh, I think it was over half of the people in the group that I was with test positive
Oh
to get
no.
back into the US. I know. Or like, they would come back, feel bad on the plane, and then test when they got back home and be like, yep, I'm positive.
Oh,
So,
geez.
yeah. So I was actually staying there like for 2 or 3 more days with some other people after the majority of the group had left. And we were all in contact. And we were just getting these messages like, oh, I'm positive and I feel pretty bad. Like, another positive case, another positive case. And like, other people have flown out and we're still in the country and we're like praying like, oh my god, I'm hoping that we're negative, like, so we can get home. It was kind of insane.
Yeah, that's crazy. I know in the couple international trips that I've done during the pandemic, that's kind of a little nerve-wracking of like, am I going to be able to get home or not?
Oh yeah, and honestly, I ended up testing negative like multiple times and felt fine, but yeah, it's super stressful.
Hmm. Yeah, it's been an added challenge for sure when it comes to traveling internationally now.
Oh, absolutely, an added cost, and it's just, yeah,
Hmm.
you gotta allow extra time for it.
Yeah, for sure. Um, well, I'm glad you made it back, and then
Yep.
you made it on some other trips.
Right, right. So then, I guess one of the next places I went, and this is kind of an interesting story. I went to the Dominican Republic,
Oh, cool. How was
and
that?
yeah, so okay, like I said, interesting. um, I actually went there to do a race, so to do a half marathon.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That'd be a fun spot
And
for it.
oh yeah, absolutely. And at the time I was going, I was kind of choosing between a half marathon in like Jamaica or the Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico. So I was like, oh, where should I do
Mhm.
one? And Jamaica seemed, or sorry, excuse me, Dominican Republic seemed to be a bit more open. And so I was like, this will be cool. Go for a few days, do a half marathon on the weekend. It'll be a fun little trip. Um, it started off great. And then, so I was there. We rented a car, drove across the island. By the way, the drivers there are insane. And seems like no one uses their turn signal, so it was
Yeah.
a little rough.
Yeah, there's been many places where I've been glad that I wasn't driving.
Yeah, I think I was driving down the freeway, and we're just driving along the coast for a little bit, and it starts to get I see some smoke up ahead, and like it starts really. This is at night, and I'm like, oh, that's really weird. What's going on? Then, like, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, on the other side of the freeway, there's like a huge tanker truck flipped over, and the entire thing's on the fire.
Oh, jeez.
Like, just right next to the road, and it's so close, like, you can feel the heat just emanating from the fire that's, like, right and they didn't even shut any part of the lanes off or anything, it's just right there. I mean,
Wow.
yeah.
Were you able to get by it, or did you have to go a different direction?
Yeah, no, we just drove right past it, but it was so close. It was so close to the lane we were driving in. I was like, this is crazy. Like, I don't know. No, I would expect the whole freeway to be shut down for this. I don't know.
Oh, dang, that's crazy.
Yeah,
But you
but
made it.
yeah, we made it. We made it. And so check in at the hotel, and then you've done races before, right? Where there's like an expo and then the race the next day, right?
Hmm.
That whole thing. So
Yeah.
check in at the hotel, and I start asking around for where the expo is going to be because I signed up online and we got a few emails, but we didn't get a ton of information. But I had like a general idea, right?
Hmm.
And when I've done races in the past, you just ask people, and it seemed like this was a pretty big race. So, yeah. So I start asking around for the expo, and like no one working at the hotel or anything like seems to know anything. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of weird. Um, like I'll just and then I tried to call the concierge or something, but it was too late. So I was like, I'll just grab dinner, go to sleep, and then I'll get up in the morning and I'm sure I'll run into other runners, the running community strong or someone, I'll figure it out, right?
Hmm.
So I go to bed, get up the next morning, go on my mission to get to the expo, and again I'm asking around, calling concierges. I'm like, and again, no one can seem to give me any information. And I'm like, okay, this is really, really weird. This should be a huge thing. Where is everybody? Right.
Yeah.
So then I think, and I like contact the race email, the race directors online, whatever. I think I finally got an answer. So it turns out the race was canceled.
Oh no.
Yeah, the race was completely canceled, expo, everything, and they had sent out no notices to anybody.
Oh jeez.
So I'm there to like do this race and I'm really excited about it because I mean, running a race in another country is always exciting.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
it's yeah, it's just outright canceled and I had no idea until like the day before.
Wow, that's wild. I'm surprised they didn't like email or anything.
Right,
Put it on
right. And
Facebook
so
or something.
yeah. So I'm like asking around like what's going on. Yeah, and it's just it felt like I could get no information and I was just like, "Oh my goodness." It was yeah, again. So and then I was able to be in contact with the race directors like weeks after the fact and I'm like, "Well, that doesn't help, that I was already
Yeah.
there." And they were like, "Oh, we canceled it because of the pandemic situation." And I was like, "Well, why would I not get a notice?" Like yeah. So, I mean, it ended up still being a cool trip, but that part was just frustrating because I was like, this is why I came here.
Yeah. Yeah. Dang. Well, I guess it gave you more time to explore the country.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit.
That's funny. Um, okay, so Dominican Republic, and then where did you go after that?
All right. And then after that, for the Christmas holiday, I went to Africa.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. It was I so well, I went to Egypt and then after Egypt, Uganda. And they're both in the African continent, but just culturally wise, very, very different.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. Have you been to Africa before?
I have not. I have plans to travel to Africa for the first time later this year, so I'm excited for
Oh, where at? If I may ask, or if you don't know yet.
Morocco.
Oh my goodness. Ah, super
Yeah,
cool.
I've been trying to get there for 2 years now.
Right,
Um,
right. I feel like I've been saying that about a lot of places.
yeah, yeah. But hopefully it's finally gonna happen. So we'll see.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I think when we were like looking at places to go, I think Morocco was like in the mix, but it had been yeah, with COVID, things were shut down, open again, flights had been canceled. I mean,
Hmm.
to be honest, like half of these trips, I literally, a lot of them were pretty last minute, or I didn't know that I was for sure going on it until I was like on the plane there.
Yeah, yeah. I totally understand that. It's been crazy trying to schedule things the last couple of years.
Right.
Um,
Um,
but yeah, Egypt is definitely on the top of my bucket list to get to.
oh,
So how was that?
oh my gosh, it was amazing. I basically wanted to go to Egypt. My main thing was I wanted to see the Great Pyramids of Giza, of
Hmm.
course, like
Definitely.
super, super basic, whatever. And I think I saw that like the second day we were there, and I was like, okay, I'm happy now. Like trip complete. um, but then a lot of what we did the rest of the time was amazing too. But let me kind of just like walk you through how we got there.
Yeah.
So, again, with the pandemic situation and everything, we had originally been planning to do like, so Qatar Airlines is like a big one that flies to Egypt.
Hmm.
Um, so we were gonna fly Qatar, and you have to go through Doha anyways. So we were like, oh, we'll just do a long layover in Qatar. That'll be fun.
Yeah, that
Um,
sounds
like
fun.
yeah, like 2 or 3 days, and then continue on to Egypt. Kind of break it up.
Hmm.
But what happened is, and oh my gosh, and this is like how things have been changing so quickly with the pandemic situation. I swear we had done all of the visa information. We had checked everything. We were all good to go. We get to SeaTac. We show up at the airport, and the people at the desk for Qatar Airlines are like, "Oh, do you have your visa filled out?" And
Oh no.
Ex- we're like, "Excuse me." And also, too, this is over the holiday, right? So things are already things are already chaotic.
Hmm.
So they're like, "Do you have your visa filled out?" And we're like, oh, you don't need a visa to get to Qatar. Long story short, they had like enacted this like visa program last minute, basically as a way to like pre-scan for COVID and if you're vaccinated.
Oh, jeez.
And the airline, it wasn't on the airline website. It wasn't emailed when you got the ticket. Like it wasn't even on the state website. Like, so we were like, how were we supposed to know?
Yeah.
And we're trying to work with them. We're like, okay, what if we just flew through? What if we didn't do a layover? What if we did this? Trying to work things out. And they were just like super. They were being very rigid, and they were just like, nope, you can't board the plane unless you have this done, and you don't have it done.
And this is
Um,
when you're at the airport trying to get on the
we're
plane.
yeah, we're at the airport. We're supposed to get on a plane in like 3 hours, and
Jeez.
we were like, well, I guess we could start the process now, but they were like, well, it's not going to get approved in time because with the time difference, and oh my gosh, it was this whole mess. So, and I've never had this. I've never really had this happen before. And they're like, you can't board the flight, and they just like close the gates, and we're just sitting there like, oh my gosh, how are we going to get to Egypt? Like, um, and so I had an idea. I was like, okay, Seattle SeaTac's a pretty big airport, but doesn't fly to a lot of places, especially Africa, Middle East. I
Hmm.
was like, let's get to the other side of the country. Like, let's get to a bigger airport and then try and get a direct flight from a bigger airport to Egypt.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like, okay, we'll see. So we end up buying last minute flights to JFK. Like last minute red eye flights to JFK, and then we had like a day layover in JFK in New York, and then a flight to Egypt. And we were like, you know what? We're gonna miss Qatar, but whatever. We just need to get to Egypt at this point.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so then we get to New York, and again with the COVID testing, we had like just been outside. It had been like a few hours outside of our window. So the test we got to board the flight for Qatar was now no longer valid
Oh,
to get
God.
on the flight. Yeah, to get on the flight to Egypt. So it was a red eye, so I think we got into JFK at like 5 in the morning, pretty early. And we're like,
Hmm.
okay, we'll just get a test in the airport, and then we'll go into New York, walk around the city for a little bit, come back, get on our flight, be good. We stood in line for about 4 hours for our COVID test. Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
in JFK, and I think they charged us like something god awful expensive, like $250 or three
Oh
or
my
something
gosh.
like that.
Jeez.
Yeah, just
A whole other plane
just
ticket right
absurd.
there.
Yeah, seriously, but we had no other choice because we needed the test to come back within a few hours so we could get on the plane. I
Hmm.
mean, just just crazy, just crazy. It ended up working out, and we got to Egypt, and it was great. But yeah, just just minor inconveniences and everything. So,
Yeah, that is quite the hassle you went through. It sounds
oh
like.
yeah, oh yeah. And then even in Egypt too, we were on this boat that was kind of cruising down the Nile,
Hmm.
and before that we had to catch a train to get there, and we're waiting at the train station. I think the train is supposed to come at like 7:30, 8 p.m. and it's like 2 or 3 hours late, and they're like, "Oh, COVID, it's the holidays," just like a good blanket excuse. And then same thing. We were on like a Nile River cruise and everything, and we ended up like being a few hours late in either direction, like to our destination. And we were like, "What's going on? Why couldn't we like dock or continue down the river?" And I don't know. I guess the crew was just like, "Oh, COVID." We're like, "Okay, whatever."
Yeah. I guess a lot of people can use that as an excuse now for not wanting to do
Mhm.
something, maybe.
Yeah, and maybe it was legitimate, maybe it wasn't, but we're like, "Okay, we're just happy to be here." Yeah.
Yeah, no, I saw on your Instagram, uh, I think it was a reel of you like kissing a camel in front of the pyramids or something like that.
Oh my goodness. That was yes. So I kissed a camel named Oscar. Um, so I realized this after. I didn't realize camels can bite, and it's kind of
Yeah.
nasty. But it's kind of one of those tourist traps, where there's like guys there and they'll like, "Oh, you want to take a picture kissing a camel?" and then they'll ask for money, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, well worth it though, because I did get some seriously awesome pics without any tourists in the background, like of the pyramids. So it was fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, it looked really cool. That's I'm sure that's a moment you won't ever forget.
Oh yeah. And what's even crazier too is I don't know, I thought like when you see pictures of the Great Pyramids, they look like they're kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Hmm.
Honestly, I think it was 40 minutes or like a 35-40 minute drive away from Cairo. And when you can like climb up part of the way on the pyramid, and when you actually look out the other direction, which you don't see this in photos all the time, you're actually overlooking like the greater Cairo area. Like
Oh wow.
you're yeah, I don't know. For some reason in my head, I just kind of thought they were always in the middle of the nowhere, but you're super close to the city. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds crazy. That would be a crazy place to live. Like you're just going
Oh
about
yeah.
your normal daily life, and then you got these ancient
Oh
pyramids.
yeah. Yeah, there's so much history, and I have never seen more temples in my life. there's there's a temple for every god and everything, and it was fun
Mhm. Yeah. So, and then how did you choose Uganda?
So yeah, that's another interesting story. So we had a few more days, so we were kind of looking at like another place that would be a good addition to this trip.
Hmm.
And we found this tour where you can actually go. It's called gorilla trekking.
Okay.
So okay, yeah, so you can, and we signed up for this like not totally really knowing 100% what we were getting into. Um
Mhm.
so it's gorilla trekking for the mountain gorillas, which they're endangered. There's only like just over 1,000 of them left in the world, and
Oh
they're
wow.
in they're in the mountains between like Uganda and Rwanda and the Congo.
Hmm.
That's where they live, and it's these specific mountain gorillas. And it was like advertised as kind of the one of those like once in a lifetime experience things. Oh
Hmm.
my goodness. So when you do a gorilla trek, you get so close to the gorillas. It was insane. Like so trekking, like you're going to trek and you go find them, and then you can get up so close to them. You're like in their natural habitat, obviously, while maintaining respect and privacy, and there's like national park guides with you and everything who work with the
Mhm.
gorillas on a daily basis. Um, yeah, so that was I kind of assumed it was kind of going to be something like, oh, like where you this sounds horrible, where you go to the zoo or you can kind of see them. No, but you're like you were out in the middle of nowhere in Uganda in the mountains going to see the gorilla. It was a very cool experience.
How close did you actually get?
So I'm not even kidding. A baby gorilla, I was taking a photo, and the baby gorillas are super curious, and I had my hair in like a long braid.
Hmm.
The baby gorilla, so my back's to them because someone's taking a photo of me, and the baby gorilla starts inching closer, and then the guide had like motioned me to like move forward. And I swear, the baby gorilla was like a hand's reach away from like yanking on my ponytail. Like,
Oh,
like, yeah, it was. We were very, very close.
wow, that's wild.
Yeah, and then we were asked to wear masks because we were so close, and I assumed, oh, because of COVID and everything. And yes, that's part of it, but they actually ask people to wear masks all the time because gorillas are so close to humans, and any
Mhm.
diseases that we have could be passed to them too. So this has like been a thing but even before the COVID outbreak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we didn't think about that. Girls, yeah, would be really close to us genetically. So I guess we would have maybe a lot of the same diseases.
Yeah, yeah. So that was that was very cool, and it was super unique going to those two different places in Africa because Egypt is, it's on the African continent, but its culture is, much more Middle Eastern. And
Hmm.
then Uganda is like right in the heart of Africa. So, yeah, like the food, the people, the weather. I mean, it was it was worlds different. Egypt's the desert, and it was actually so much colder than I thought it would be, in all honesty. Like, I should have packed way more clothes. But then Uganda is hot and dry heat and humid. So, um, honestly, yeah, amazing experience. I never thought I would be going to Uganda, and if it wasn't for that gorilla trek, I probably wouldn't have.
Hmm. How did you find that? Did you just do a Google search or something?
Yeah, yeah, a Google search, and then Kentucky does tours with them too.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
and then
cool.
there's we met some other people who are like serious gorilla trekkers, and they were like, oh, this is my 20th time trekking
Oh,
for the
geez.
gorillas or something like that, and we were like, oh wow.
That's a lot of times going out to see some gorillas.
Oh, absolutely, there's like a huge core fan base, it almost seems like.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And then was it the same thing? Like you had to test negative to get back in and all that?
So Uganda, so the reason why Uganda's been doing so well, they've been doing they're trying to encourage more tourists to come because, again, a lot of their economy is tourism.
Hmm.
Um, and they've been very conscientious with COVID checks. I have not. I think this was the most extreme. So of course you need a test to fly in to Uganda.
Hmm.
Um, and then they test everybody right when you get off the plane. Like
Oh, wow.
as yeah, like you're coming off the plane, you get your test, and then you go through customs. Like it's right there.
Jeez.
Um, yeah, I've never done that before. And then they were super strict to even there's like get to even walk inside the airport when you're leaving. Like, because other countries in Africa, like if you were flying into them, you might not need a COVID test. I
Hmm.
mean, we were going back to the US, so you do. But just to even walk in the airport, even if you weren't even flying out, you needed to have a negative COVID test.
Wow.
Yeah, on the way back.
That's
So, and
intense.
right. But then they were advertising like, "Oh, we have all these checks. We have no COVID. Come visit us for tourism, stuff like that." So, it was, yeah, but so I think in the span of like 2 weeks, I had tested for COVID about 9 times, and luckily, luckily it was negative every single time. And this was when Omicron was going around like Africa,
Yeah.
especially yeah, Southern Africa. So we were actually a little bit nervous, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that really popped up there in Africa, especially.
Oh, I know, and that's why I didn't even know if we were gonna make it to Egypt. I was like, oh my gosh, are we gonna have to cancel this? Or yeah,
Oh man, it just adds more stress to the trip.
it's so much more stress. Yeah. So every single time now, I'm like, buy travel insurance, buy travel insurance.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously. I mean, you're spending a lot of money to get to these places, and
Oh
committing
yeah.
a lot of time too, and it would just suck to not be able to make that happen.
Right, right. Or again, to be stuck there and kind of have
Yeah,
to figure things out.
not be able to get home.
Yeah, and that whole quarantine thing. Um, yeah. So that was amazing, honestly, and I absolutely. This was. I told you this is my first time in Africa. I absolutely loved it. It was amazing. Like maybe just because it's so different, but I was honestly kind of thinking, and I was like, wow, I might actually like places in Africa more than like going to Europe because it's just so different. And
Hmm.
it was amazing. It was a ton of fun. I had a great time, and the food, oh my gosh, the food was so rich in Uganda. It was so good and so flavorful.
Huh? Do they have like lots of different spices, or what kind of food was it?
Yeah, it was like so we got off the airport and we had like samosas for breakfast,
Okay.
and they oh my gosh, I think it was like 50 cents, or like or we paid $2 for a few, and it was they were just delicious. I was like, oh, we have to go back and get more. And then they have this they're like, one of their main dishes is this thing called a Rolex, like the watch.
Hmm.
But in you can typically find it like on the street, like street food, and it's sort of like an omelet, but then there's like cheese, meat, vegetables, a bunch of stuff inside, and it is like a omelet burrito with a bunch of stuff inside. It's
Oh, that
amazing.
sounds
It was
good.
so yeah, it was so good. Um, to be honest, I was a little worried about some of the cleanliness of things because then you're in the middle of the street and they're like serving French fries out of like painters buckets that are like on the ground, sitting in like a puddle of water, and I was like, okay, well, I'm still gonna eat it.
Yeah, that's honestly, it's funny though. Some of those places are the best places to get food.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
some of the best food is that maybe not so sanitary places.
Yeah. And luckily, it was all good, but I think it was $1, and I can't even, like, US dollar equivalency, I can't even remember what it was called, but it was like a basket of French fries, and then there was like spaghetti on top of it, and then
Okay.
like and then like tomatoes, and then there I don't know, onions on it too, and then there was carrots in there. It was just like everything, and it was delicious. I It was so good.
Yeah, that sounds good. It sounds like basically you just put the whole meal together there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just like whatever you want, and then they kind of like mix it up, and it's like I don't know. I just have never had spaghetti over my fries.
It's an interesting combo there.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Um, okay, so did you go on any other trips during the pandemic?
Okay, yeah. So then my most recent one, this was like the last one. Oh, and then went to Mexico, but that's super close,
Hmm.
so I hardly even count that. Um, and then I did end up going to Sri Lanka,
Yeah, how was that?
which
I was really intrigued by that.
yeah, you know what? That was a ton of fun. first off, it's very hard to get to Sri Lanka from Seattle.
I bet.
Like as far as flight wise, it's actually a really inexpensive country to travel in though right now. Like
Hmm.
the exchange rate really favors the US dollar. Um and to be honest, they're not going through some great things governmental wise right now.
Hmm.
They're kind of going through an economic crisis, and I don't know if you've been following the news, but someone was overthrown, and they're going through a new election, and yeah, it's this whole
Yeah.
thing. But yeah, I've always wanted to go to India. That's been on my list, but with again with the COVID situation, it hasn't really been like a great feasible option right now.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, Sri Lanka was amazing, and it's crazy how it's the island off the coast of India. Um,
Hmm.
it's amazing how lush and beautiful it is. Like there is beaches, there's mountains. I mean, I was so surprised. I hadn't really heard much about it, but it was a really gorgeous place.
Yeah, and was that with the group as well, or how did you
Yeah,
find out?
yes. Yeah, so I also went with a travel group, and I actually was one of the only Americans there, just
Wow.
because it's so far from the US.
Mhm.
And so I was learning. I didn't realize it's a super popular tourist destination, if you're from the UK or Europe or Australia, because I think
Hmm.
from Australia it was only like a 5-hour flight. Maybe from the UK it was a 6-hour flight, something like that. So like almost as much as us going to the East Coast, like relatively short.
Yeah, yeah. Huh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, and it was very entertaining. I was surrounded by a bunch of Brits and Aussies, and it was a ton of fun. And I drink so much tea with them, and and Sri Lanka's known for their tea anyway, so it was a ton of fun.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. How long were you there for?
Oh gosh, I think that one was maybe 8, 9, 10 days, something like that, under 2 weeks
Okay.
for sure. Yeah. And I got some serious sunburns. Like, oh my gosh, I think we went to this one beach where there's like turtles swimming around, and you can kind of like
Mhm.
swim with the turtles, or they'll like swim right up to you. And we were trying to get some photos and everything. I think we were out in direct sun for, I swear, 10 or 15 minutes. And I just got these, like, not even that long, but the sun was high in the day. I got these most insane burn lines on my shoulders. It was, yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I went to Colombia earlier this year, and we spent one day out in some islands, in the sun all day. And man, even with all the sunscreen, we all got very
Right,
sunburned.
right.
It's just like the, I mean, you're closer to the equator and things like that. Like I feel like just the heat is more intense there in the sun.
Right, right. Oh yeah, no, totally. Um, but it was really cool. It was probably one of the more unique places I've been, honestly, up till this point. And the
Yeah.
culture was fantastic. The people were fantastic. I mean, it's a Buddhist it's a Buddhist country, so we got to visit some really cool temples. And then there's like so many different influences. You have Asian influences, Indian influences with the food, and we had some amazing curries. And then, like, I didn't realize this, the Portuguese, we actually went to like an old Portuguese fort because they had actually like conquered it at one point or something like that, which I had no
Hmm.
idea. Yeah,
Hmm.
so there
Interesting.
was just, I feel like it was just a mixing pot of a ton of different cultures, and yeah, it was a ton of fun.
Yeah, that's well, I've always wanted to go to India for kind of that reason because it has such
Right.
unique history and culture and a lot of different influences in it. Um, so that's interesting. I don't really know much about Sri Lanka,
Yeah,
personally.
me either until I went.
What was your favorite part about Sri Lanka?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. My favorite part, oh, honestly, we there was this one mountain town called Ella, and I think that's the cutest name, Ella. Like that's adorable, by the way. Um, and I think that was one of my favorite parts. There was like we took the train there, and I think you saw on my Instagram, you can like take photos hanging off the train, and it goes by all the tea
Yeah.
fields and everything, and it's just beautiful. And then it is the cutest town. There's like a like downtown area that's pretty touristy. It kind of reminds me of like maybe Cancun or Tulum in Mexico a little bit, but on a much smaller scale. Um, and there's like some bars and good restaurants, but then you're just in the middle of the mountains, and you can go hiking, and the views are gorgeous. We did yoga at this amazing like yoga retreat, just looking at the mountains, and I was like,
Oh
and our
man.
teacher, yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, I should move here. And our yoga teacher was actually from Germany, and she did just that. I was like,
That's
yeah,
crazy.
it was great. So I enjoyed that. I just didn't realize there were so many mountains in Sri Lanka. Just had no idea.
Hmm. Is the whole country mountainous, or was there other landscapes?
Yeah, to be honest, we were just mainly in the southern part of the country. I guess there was some kind of civil unrest in the northern part of the country for a bit, so um, that wasn't very heavy with travelers. But yeah, to be honest, I'm not really sure. And yeah, we went to an elephant sanctuary, got to see baby elephants. It was really sweet. Oh my gosh. And then there are dogs everywhere.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely. I didn't realize like how, because there's no animal control, they're not spayed or neutered, and they're just
Mhm.
living on the street, and they just keep having puppies. Um so I actually went running almost every day in Sri Lanka. First off, the humidity. I don't I don't think I've ever been in another place more humid. It was it like I even had at some points like people riding by in tuk-tuks, and they would like splash water on me because it looked like I was dying. Like it was
Funny.
very considerate. So that was insane. But then the dogs, there was just dogs everywhere, and we were by this national park to see some elephants and go on a safari. And I remember going on a run, and it was actually kind of scary. I like I would go out, and it seemed like every half mile there would be a pack of like 7, 8 dogs, and they would come like barking at me, and then I would just kind of be like, no, or like, be firm, and then they wouldn't really come too close. I just think they were more curious.
Hmm.
Um and then it'd be fine, but it was just frustrating because I didn't want to like run right by them because they kind of think that's a game. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I would just kind of walk by, and then we're driving back from the safari later, and I see like Sri Lankan women walking down the street, and they were feeding the dogs, and I was like, oh my gosh,
Oh
they probably
no.
thought I had food. Yeah.
Dang. Yeah, I remember that in Guatemala there was stray dogs just everywhere.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and it was like, yeah, I mean, I feel bad for them because they look hungry, but also, they're a bit of a nuisance too.
Right, right. Yeah, I know it's like that in Mexico too, and I've seen that in Egypt it was like that a bit, but I swear, like I have never seen more stray dogs per capita than in Sri Lanka. Like it was, yeah. But I mean, again, a lot of them were pretty friendly, so it was fine. Just kind of more annoying. And you know what, Kyle? Actually, that leads me up to another story. I do have
Yeah.
a pretty crazy story for you that you're gonna want to hear.
Okay. I'm intrigued now.
Yeah. So then it's time to go, and we're you know getting back from Sri Lanka to the US. I think I
Mhm.
was on 5 separate flights.
Oh, jeez.
Like I said, it was just so, because originally I was trying to route through Malaysia because they had a good flight path, but then with the pandemic I couldn't. So, it was kind of wild. We had some people also test positive. I think there was a couple from Australia and they tested positive for COVID. Um, and they were like, "Oh, we're not worried. We get 2 more weeks at the beach here."
Yeah. Like,
So
oh
they were
darn.
cool with it. Yeah. So I'll kind of walk you through the process of leaving the country. So they're kind of like in this middle of this economic crisis that I told you about.
Hmm.
The last few days there was like rolling blackouts and power outages. Um, and then the weekend before we're about to head out, there was a bunch of riots in the capital city. I think you might have seen this on the news, but yeah,
Yeah.
a bunch bunch of riots in the capital city, and they did a lockdown. So we actually weren't technically, like, we had almost been done with the majority of our trip, so it didn't put too much of a damper on things. But it was eerie how locked down the city was. I think we actually kind of convinced a hostel owner to like serve us lunch, even though technically you could get fined for doing that. Um,
Oh, really?
yeah, because that was the point of the lockdown. You couldn't open restaurants, stores, anything because of political unrest. But
Oh,
yeah,
weird.
everything was, yeah, yeah. And it was weird because it reminded me back of like the COVID lockdowns like the year before.
Hmm.
But it was just due to riots outbreaking. Um, and then they had shut off all access to like social media, like Facebook, Instagram, everything. Um, and like the cell towers were super spotty. So I had been on like a Sri Lankan cell tower, and I've never had this happen before. Like everything was just like shut off. It was
Jeez.
crazy. And it was only for like a day or two, and then it came back on. So and then they had suspended flights coming into the country too. And so yeah, this whole thing. So luckily they were letting flights go out, and so we were fine, but we were all kind of like nervous, and they were like contacting embassies just in case for us, because we didn't really know what happened, or like what could happen, and it ended up all
Hmm.
being fine. Um, so then to come back from Sri Lanka, I had a layover in Kuwait, and I was like, okay, let me just turn this into a long layover. I've never been to Kuwait before. Why not? So I get there, and it was actually so funny. I wasn't able to print my visa because
Hmm.
I couldn't find a printer in Sri Lanka
Yeah.
at any of the hotels, and so then I'm going through customs, and the guy's like, "Oh, what are you doing in Kuwait?" And like he's like, "You're American. Why are you here?" And I was like, I have to explain like, "Oh, I'm coming back from Sri Lanka. Like I just thought I would stop by. I've never been to Kuwait." And he's like, "Why are you in Kuwait? We have nothing here." And I was like, "Dude, what?" um
That's funny.
yeah, and so then I mentioned like I wasn't able to print my visa. And so he sees
Hmm.
that I have an iPhone, and he goes, "Oh, can you airdrop me your visa?" And I'm like, "What?" Like the most unofficial thing ever. He's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just airdrop it to me." So I airdrop him my visa, and he's like, "All right, you're good to go."
What the heck? That's crazy.
I've never had like customs. It was just entertaining. It was entertaining. Um
That's funny. Yeah, usually customs is very like they're very rigid and not.
yeah, and the people in front of me were, I'm not sure what country they were from, but they were giving them trouble, and they had all these papers, so I'm like kind of freaking out because I was like, shoot, I wasn't able to print it, whatever. And he's just like, "Oh, airdrop it to me." And he just like breezes me by, and like he breezes me by his security again, and I just like enter the country, and I'm like, okay.
That's funny.
They're friendly with Americans, so cool. um and I told you I'm a runner. So
Hmm.
I get there in the evening, and I hear Kuwait's like super safe, like very low crime, like Kuwait City, very low crime rate, everything. But it's dark when I get there, and I'm like, like I'm not gonna run. I'm just gonna get up in the morning and I'm gonna go run.
Mm-hmm.
So then I like, look up some things to do for the next day, and I have this whole itinerary planned. Like I'm gonna go to this museum, and I'm excited.
Yeah.
Um, and so I get up the next morning and I go out to run. Oh, and mind you, it's during Ramadan.
Oh.
Yeah, which I had like totally forgotten. So I had a friend that I met in Sri Lanka who works in Dubai, and she was like, "Oh, Larissa, you need to get an abaya or something like to cover up if you go like in the
Hmm.
marketplace or whatnot." And I was like, "Okay." So I got one and it was great. Um, so I go running in the morning, and because it's Ramadan, like no one's out. Everyone's
Yeah.
fasting or like trying to lay low, conserve energy. It's like probably 9 a.m. And it honestly, it was super hazy, but like it felt way cooler than Kuwait. It was I was like, oh, this is kind of like a break, even though it was like 85 degrees. But it was just so hazy. So I run around like the outskirts of the city, kind of along the water. I'm about like an hour away into my run. And Kyle, this is such a crazy story. You'll love this. You'll love this. I'm about an hour into my run, and I'm like right in the heart of downtown. I'm about like a mile away from my hotel.
Hmm.
And like right by the financial district and everything. And I see no one. No one is out. Like there's only people driving in their cars again because it's Ramadan.
Hmm.
Um, and then I'm turning the street, and then out of nowhere, this pack of wild dogs, there's three of them, comes at me, like to the side of me. And I'm like, oh shit. And like it happened so quick. I don't even have time to react. Like they kind of came like from behind me to the side, and one of the dogs immediately bites me in the leg. And I'm
Oh
like,
God.
yeah, I'm like, oh shit, like this is gonna be a long day. And so then I'm like, this it all happened so fast. I'm like screaming bloody murder. Like there's three of them. They're pretty big. They're about like 60, 65 pounds. Like
Jeez.
these are big dogs. So then one of them immediately came up, bit me in the leg. I like tried to kick one of the other dogs, and I'm like surrounded with my good leg. And then I got bit in the hamstring on that leg,
Oh
fell
no.
down. Yeah, I'm on the ground. The dogs are like on top of me, like road rash the entire right side of my body. And then another dog bit me in the arm, and I'm still screaming like trying to fight them off. Like I don't know what to do. And then, oh my God, this savior is like, this guy just so happens to be walking out of like an auto shop right when this is going on. And he hears me, and he like starts throwing rocks at the dogs. And I'm like, oh, thank God. And so then the dogs kind of like back away a little bit. And I've been bit quite a few times at this point. I'm like, my entire lower legs are just covered in blood. Like the entire right side of my body is
Jeez.
covered in blood. Um, and this guy's name is Kumar, and he doesn't speak any English. He just puts his arm around me and starts like shuffling me to his car, and like I'm like, I don't know him. I could be kidnapped, but like I got to get out of the situation. Um so then he like puts and he like has a single Kleenex in his pocket, and he takes it out. He's so sweet, and starts like dabbing my open wounds with his single tissue. His name's Kumar, by the way. Um, and then so then we go into his car. And I'm like shaking. I'm have so much adrenaline. Like I'm freaked out. I'm so scared.
Mm.
And the dogs start like circling his vehicle in the parking lot, and they're barking. Like then they start like slamming their bodies against like the door, like the doors of his car, and they're like trying to jump up on the hood. It's absurd. And all Kumar does is he like reaches over and he clicks the lock button. As if that's gonna do anything, right?
Yeah.
And so then I'm like trying. I have nothing on me, no cards, no passport,
Hmm.
nothing. But luckily I have my phone, and it's like at 19%. um so then I thought he spoke Arabic, so I'm like trying to like piece together some like Arabic words, and I'm like, hospital, hospital, like can you take me to the hospital? Um, and then turns out he was like, no, Hindi, and he's from India, and so I'm like, oh, okay, like let me try and Google Translate something else. So anyways, off we go. He drives me to like the main Kuwaiti hospital, and I'm like the only American there, walking in, gushing blood, like these like two really nice Kuwaiti women like came up to me and they spoke a little bit more English than him because his English was not fantastic, and they were like, "What happened?" And he's just like, "Oh, dog bite, dog bite." And this was an insane experience. We walk in. I've never been to like a hospital in another country before.
Hmm.
We walk in and everything, and again, I have no passport on me, but I had a picture of it on my phone, luckily. So they
Yeah.
like write down my name on a piece of paper. Like, I don't even know if they spelled it right. And then they like triage me, and I'm like waiting in the hospital waiting room, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to get a rabies shot. Like, I'm like, I can't believe this just happened. I like text my family and I'm like, hey, don't freak out. I just got bit. I'm gonna need to get rabies shots when I get home, all this stuff, whatever. Anyways, so then these like Kuwaiti women end up staying with me and translating with me, and it was insane. They triaged me, they gave me a tetanus shot. Oh, that's the dog again. They triaged me, they gave me a tetanus shot, and yeah, then we like go to the operating room because I like they're like, oh, you probably need stitches because I got bit pretty deep.
Hmm.
And it's funny, the operating room, everyone is like standing in line, like clutching their body part that needs to be operated
Oh gosh. Yeah.
on. And these Kuwaiti women are like so fantastic. They're like advocating for me. They're like, you need to triage her like first, like she's got open wounds, all this stuff, or um whatever. And so then the surgeon ended up speaking like a decent amount of English to where I could understand. They didn't end up doing stitches because they didn't want an infection, so they just kind of like kept them all open. And I think some of them didn't stop bleeding for like 6 hours. It took quite a while.
Gee.
Yeah, so they were pretty deep. And then they're like, okay, you need to go to the infectious disease hospital to get a rabies shot. Because I'm about to get on a 35-hour plane ride. Like, I need a rabies shot now. So we go to this infectious disease hospital. The Kuwaiti women take me there. Kamar had to head home. My savior. And oh my God, their infectious disease hospital's amazing. They have the arsenal. They have yellow fever. They have COVID, measles, Ebola vaccine. They've got everything that like you could ever need.
Dang.
And so then they're all like, oh, I want to see your bites. So they end up like wrapping and unwrapping my bites like 3 times. And not sure if you knew this, but when you get bit by rabid dogs, and you have to get the rabies vaccine, so you get like a rabies immunoglobulin, like the right as soon as possible after you get bit, and they
Hmm.
have to infiltrate the wounds with the immunoglobulin, which basically means they're sticking a needle into like my 9 times I've been
Oh
bit.
gosh.
And no anesthesia, and the doctor's like, I kind of wince, and he's like, I'm sorry, and I'm like, just get it done, like, and then you need 5 more shots in the arm, like after that, at specific intervals
Gee.
apart. It was crazy. And then they give me antibiotics and everything and whatever. And all of this whole thing, this is how amazing the Kuwait medical system is. I was in and out in under 3 hours
Wow.
after all this stuff. Yeah. And they gave me everything for free. I didn't pay a thing.
Really?
Yeah, everything was free. The care, the antibiotics, the creams it was all free. And they gave me enough to like last me, to like the whole course. And then the Kuwaiti women that I met, it was so sweet. They go, okay, we'll drop you off at your hotel. You rest. And then they go, okay, we'll pick you up later for dinner. And I'm like, oh, sure. So then they pick me up later for iftar dinner, which is like, after the sun goes down during Ramadan, like breaking the fast.
Hmm.
And their entire family's there. There's like 30 people. I meet everybody, and a lot of them had actually studied in the U.S. or spoke English pretty well, so it was cool to converse.
Mhm.
And they invited me into their home. They had this party, like then we went to the souk, the market at night, and we hung out. And then they send me home with like an entire suitcase full of like Kuwaiti outfits and dates and tea and like
Jeez.
incense and all these things. And I was like, oh my goodness.
That is that was an insane story.
So that's my short but eventful time in Kuwait, Kyle.
So wild. Though that was a roller coaster.
Yeah. You maybe should have opened with that.
I can't even imagine. That would be terrifying.
It was,
Uh,
yeah, especially as a runner. Like, dogs, like even dogs on leashes in the US, that's like my worst nightmare. And it
mhm.
actually happened. So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you always hear about that.
yeah,
Um, in the running world, they're always like, you got to be careful with dogs
right, right.
because that exact thing could happen right there. But how it actually happened, my
Yeah.
goodness. And it sounds like it was probably pretty dire. And without Kumar,
Yeah.
things could
Oh,
have been.
Kumar was my savior. He even, we're walking into the hospital and he goes, okay, selfie, selfie. And I'm like, Kumar, I'm bleeding everywhere. And he's like, we like take multiple selfies outside the hospital.
That's, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
But yeah, like and it was crazy too because I go to the hospital and they're like, where did you get bit? Because there's a lot of, so wild dogs have been eradicated from Kuwait City for like the past decade. So they thought I was in the villages or something. And I'm like, no, I was right downtown. And they're like, what? Like how? And I guess a family was telling me like their grandfather's like on some kind of governmental board, and he was like going to bring the issue up again because they have a wild dog issue too. It's not as bad as like Sri Lanka,
Hmm.
but apparently like during Ramadan you're kind of feasting and like there's a lot of meat that sometimes is left out,
Mm.
and people can just kind of like just it's in the trash or whatever. So I think it being Ramadan had maybe like lured some of the dogs into the city because it was like I told you I was running for over an hour and didn't see a soul, no dogs, no people, no
Yeah.
nothing. Yeah, just absurd.
Gosh, what a wild story. I'm sure you'll never forget that.
Oh, never forget that. I'm like slightly freaked out to go running in other countries now after this. I'm like, but on the bright side, if I do get bit again, you only need 2 rabies shots, not the whole 5-course thing.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, right.
You gotta look at the bright side, right?
Exactly.
That's funny. Um, yeah, I definitely would love to talk more about running in other countries. That's been some of my, especially since the pandemic, that's been one of my favorite things to do, actually.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a really fun and unique way to see a city or a country.
Oh, absolutely. And you can cover so much more ground if you're running than just walking around.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
definitely, definitely. But yeah, we'll save that for another
Oh,
podcast.
absolutely, absolutely, Kyle.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, any other pandemic travel stories that you want to share?
Oh man, it's really hard to top that last one.
Yeah, that's man, you can make a movie out of that.
Oh God. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, no, it was great. Traveling during the pandemic was like interesting, definitely some more added challenges, but kind of like
Hmm.
you said, there's some benefits too, less crowds, maybe more intimate conversations with specific people and
Yeah.
everything. And if you do get to meet the locals, yeah, and a lot of the people that I've interacted with are like just happy that tourism has returned and or is on the uptick, and
Yeah.
are just excited, and it's nice to be able to like help other economies too.
Hmm. Yeah, that's what I've really noticed is uh, not only the travelers themselves, but the locals are very, very appreciative of being able to have
Right.
tourists there. People are really, you know, excited to actually get to travel and be
Right.
out and do things. I think that's actually been a really positive thing to come out of this whole pandemic is that people are a lot more appreciative of, having this moment, I
Right.
guess.
Right. And I've gotten to speak to a lot of people who work in the tourism or travel industry, and they were like, oh my gosh, the pandemic was like the worst year of my life. No one was here
Mhm.
and financially. And yeah, so hope to
Yeah.
see it return.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that's, honestly, that's my hope with all the travel stuff that I'm doing, including this podcast, is I want people to have these opportunities to go explore and see the world and really just enjoy the moment, enjoy the opportunities that you have because you never know. I mean, you might not get another chance.
Yeah, I know. I was really life flashed before my eyes right there when I got bit by those dogs. So
Yeah. Yeah. And good advice to everyone. Maybe, be careful when you're running in other countries.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it was my fault because I was like, Sri Lanka. Well, I'm thankful I didn't get bit in Sri Lanka, in all honesty, because the Kuwaiti healthcare was amazing.
Yeah. Maybe good motivation to run faster.
Yeah, there you go.
That's funny. Well, Larissa, thank you for taking the time to share some of your stories. I really enjoyed listening to them, and I'm super excited to hear more about your travel experiences in the future.
Oh,
But I appreciate you
absolutely.
taking the time.
Yeah, of course. And thank you. I've had so much fun listening to some of the other podcasts you've done. So
Oh, good. I'm glad.
yeah, no, I'll continue to have to follow you, and you've gotten some interesting people on there. So it's awesome. Happy to be one of them.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun. I've got to meet a lot of cool people with unique experiences from all over the world, and it's fun to talk about it and share it with others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I guess I'll ask you really quick. Where can people find you?
Where can people find? Oh, yeah, that's good. Physically or online?
Online, social media. If you want to share that, you don't have to share it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I know I'm on Instagram. You can find me at Larissa Cola, Kola. Yeah, I post some fun pictures from traveling and running and everything. So, yeah, or slide into the DMs and we can chat more about travels if you want to.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again, Larissa, and I'll look forward to seeing you somewhere around the world soon.
Oh, absolutely. The world's smaller than you think. Thanks,
Yep,
Kyle.
that's for sure. Hey everybody, Kyle here. If you enjoyed today's show and want more, you can always check out every episode on Spotify and Anchor. And now you can also listen on YouTube. Links are in the description below. If you want to see my travel pictures as well as travel pictures from guests on the show, you can check them out on Instagram. The page is called Our Travel Experiences Podcast. And if you want to share your own pictures on the Instagram page and or be a guest on the podcast, you can message me via that Instagram page or email me at ourtravelexperiences@outlook.com. I would love to see your pictures and hear about your travel experiences. And if that isn't enough for you, make sure to check out my new show from Around the World Fridays. Every Friday, I'm taking 5 to 10 minutes to discuss one specific travel topic, whether that be questions I get from listeners, sharing some souvenirs that I've bought over the years, or discussing one particular city or country that I've been to, and so much more. You'll be able to listen to that via Spotify and Anchor as well, and be able to see the video version, which I'm really excited about, on YouTube. So check it out. I promise you won't be disappointed. And thanks again for listening, and I will see you around the world soon.